Hey guys, it's Emma. It's been a minute, and I'm sorry, but as I'm into my school year, I will definitely be posting a lot less frequently on this channel, and I'm sorry about it, but here we are, back to our regularly scheduled content, and I'll be honest, I haven't made a book review for a while just because this channel has always been a passion project for me, just like how reading and writing always is, and for a moment there, I was very busy and literally had no time to read, but I am one of the co-presidents of my school's book club, so we picked this book, I picked it up, and oh my god, do I have so much to say. This one really was one of these books that I read where I was truly just like, wow, I love reading. Because sometimes you'll be reading books that are quite hard to read and quite tiring, and once you find a book like this that is just like, I literally read this and I think like 4 days, 3 days, I don't know, but it was definitely very short, and I would read it in class all the time, and my teachers would be like, what are you reading? Not in class, I pay attention, but like, for example, if you'd finish a test early, what are you reading? This. So without further ado, let's get into my thoughts on it. As always, spoilers, I'm sorry, it literally can't be avoided. If you need anything to read, or if you have something to read, I really, really, really recommend adding this to your to-read list because this is truly such a good book. I just really was, wow, I was blown away by it, and maybe it's because I had been reading a sort of like realistic fiction book for a while, and those aren't necessarily my favorite, even though the book was quite good. When I picked this one up, it felt very lively and very real, and so I'm just gonna talk a bit about it. So here we go, spoiler warning out of the way. So basically, this book, oh my gosh. Okay, so let's just talk real quick about Evelyn Hugo herself and my opinions on her. Even from the back of the cover, it says she's kind of a controversial person, but I think throughout the book, you kind of come to respect her, but not necessarily like her. And I think a lot of how the author sets up scenarios in the book and she is able to prevail through them seems very realistic. Sometimes authors will set up like obstacles for their characters and their characters will just get past them super easily. But in Evelyn's case, it honestly feels a lot more realistic and has a lot more heart to it, in my opinion, because, for example, when she sleeps with the guy to stay with Celia, who we'll talk about later, like, there is no easy way out of that, and instead of writing her character an easy way out of that, Taylor Jenkins Reid, who I have so much respect for this book, I can't wait to read the rest of her work, I put on my Goodreads to read list already, Taylor Jenkins Reid, she only has a hard way out. Evelyn Hugo only does. But the point is, by illustrating this, that Taylor Jenkins Reid does not let her characters off easy, which gives this book a lot more heart. I thought it was quite good. And the one thing that I will say is, I think, maybe this is just me, but as I was reading it, I was more invested in Evelyn Hugo's story than I was in Monique. And because I was more invested in the actual, like, the actual contents of Evelyn Hugo's story, because I was more interested in learning about her, when they gave the reveal at the end, it felt a little lackluster just because I was so invested in Evelyn's that when we got to the part with Monique, whenever we got back to parts with Monique, I was like, oh, Monique's here too. Right. And it wasn't like I didn't like Monique, but it was just a little bit jarring because I liked Evelyn's story so much, not in the way that I necessarily liked her as a person, but in the way that I thought it was very well written. Her character was very engaging, and she really felt like a living, breathing, flawed person. But anyway, then when we switched back to Monique, I would kind of just be like, oh yeah, Monique is here too. And then when we got to the end and they gave that reveal, I was kind of like, oh, yes. So basically, it wasn't that shocking to me. I had so many people asking me, being like, did you get to it yet? Did you get to it yet? And so I was kind of like ready throughout the book for this whole reveal. And it just never, I feel like, hit me in the way it was supposed to. Maybe that's just my opinion, but it didn't have the profound impact that I think it was supposed to. It was definitely surprising. And I did not guess it, but it was definitely something. And so I'm trying to think of like other plot thoughts, because I'm kind of just coming up with random stuff here to talk about, which, let's be honest, is honestly most of my book reviews. But I make them for people who I assume have already read the book or maybe want to, like, I make these ones with spoilers for people who have already read the book and maybe want to hear someone else's opinion on it. Others, sometimes I make for people who haven't, but this one is definitely for you guys who have read it out there. Anyway, so the Seven Husbands. Yeah, so Celia and Celia. So Celia, if you don't know, or if you don't remember, is her lover. Celia is the love of her life, which we love. And so I didn't really realize this. I knew she liked Don because that was made very clear through that part. And I also feel really bad for Ernie Diaz, but at the same time I don't, because like knowing the character of Evelyn, that was all she ever used him for, like, you know, because she did use people in this book like, quite a lot, let's be honest. And I just felt kind of bad for him when she left him. But then Don, dang, okay, so his like little character arc at the end where he apologized was like, I thought that was a very, very, very profound moment, because often when people apologize, like the victims or the people they're apologizing to are just expected to be like, okay, and take their apology. But Evelyn, instead, when he apologizes for all the abuse he put her through during their marriage, is like, why is this going to help me? You can be sorry all you want, but that doesn't change the abuse that you put me through, which I think is a response that I don't see enough of just in general media. Like, I think it was a very profound moment in the book and showed a lot of, I think, the good points of Evelyn's character, because she is willing to stand up for herself no matter what, which I think is great. And you can see as she gets older, when he apologizes later in the book, how much she's grown since this marriage. But definitely that marriage was interesting. You could tell it was definitely one that she liked, but also I kind of like, I was kind of invested in the beginning too. I like, you know, she described their courting phase as so cute, which, you know, obviously you're supposed to think that. And just, yeah, but then it kind of fell apart, and I didn't blame her at all, because how could you possibly stay with someone if they do that to you, commit that sort of abuse to you? And basically when she finally, like, when she finally broke away from him, it kind of just felt like a win. But also, something that I thought was quite interesting about her entire relationship with Don is how it, like, outlined, she used it a little bit to outline how hushed up abuse was during this time, because I think this was, like, the 50s or the 60s when they were married. And there's this one scene where she's in the trailer with this one woman, and the woman sees that it's clearly, like, a bruise on her face, like, from him hitting her. And it's just hushed up, like, and she makes this little comment on, like, well, no one said anything about it at that time, which I think was really, I don't know. I mean, I've always known that that was the case, but I think it was a quite profound moment, and it made me think, especially, about the circumstances of that time, and it just grounded a little bit more in reality, I think, because even though I knew that that was true back then, it was interesting to see a comparison in a book like that. Not saying I haven't before, but I just thought it was an interesting comparison. Also, something I just noticed while flipping through this is the, like, little snippets of tabloid stuff. At first I was a little unsure about it. I was like, oh wow, what is this? But it was quite interesting to actually read them. I think it added a little bit of substance to the book. Not substance as in, like, it changed up the layout a little bit. Where the book is, like, visceral as this, grounded in reality, it feels vibrant, it feels alive. It's felt very, like, it didn't feel jarring to see these magazine covers. It did a little bit at first, but I got used to it quickly, and I think the incorporation of them was a very smart choice by the author. I really thought it was, you know, I thought it added to the story instead of taking away from it, because I know when I started reading it, I was a little unsure about the magazine covers and all this stuff, but then I realized that obviously they were playing a purpose, and I definitely liked the incorporation of them. Also, something I'll literally never get over in this book, coming back to Evelyn Hugo, is how smart she is. Like, not just she's smart, but she's, like, has this way with people. For example, her marriage to Mick Rivera, I think it is, she is, like, calculating beyond belief. And some people might say, oh, like, that's, you know, that's just, like, a bad person, but it is really, like, the author does a great job of fleshing out this part of her character, and I think it's especially apparent in her chapters with this guy, and it was just amazing. I found myself reading it, and I was like, oh my, because like I said, it feels very grounded in reality. All the challenges she's faced with seem real and seem like obstacles for her, so that when she figures them out, you feel even more amazed that she's figured them out, because it seems so, like, real and unavoidable, all these challenges and stuff she has to go through. And so I think that was, like, especially apparent in the Mick Rivera chapter when she marries him. Okay, so then the next husband, Rex North, I think this guy was like, he was the least substantive of all the husbands. I think all the husbands kind of had something distinctive about them, and this guy was kind of just an actor and equal to Evelyn. I don't really think there was anything that crazy about him, but I did think it was cute that he found love, and that is why they ended their marriage. I thought that was really cute. And yeah, I don't know. I don't think there was really much to say about his chapter. He didn't really stick out to me as a character, but I did think him and his wife were cute when he eventually married her. Oh, Harry. Harry. Ugh. I feel like you just love him so much when reading this book. And, like, they set you up for it because obviously he is her best friend. He is her confidant. And he might not be the greatest person either. None of them are, and that is almost one of the themes of this book. But yet he is so, like, Harry. And how their relationship works and how they eventually have Connor, it might seem immoral to some, but this, like, that part in the book when it was him, John, I think is his name, and Celia and Evelyn living in an apartment as couples, like, together. And she says it quite often that they're their own little family. I thought that part was a very vivid part of the book, how you could just picture them all together and how their happiness was so palpable and how they could get away with it through this arrangement with Harry and the arrangement with John. And then Connor, obviously they had Connor, and that was kind of a little bit hard on Celia, as I'm sure it would be for anyone. And then obviously it keeps going, their marriage, but Celia and Evelyn's relationship is over because of the choice in the movie with Max. And I think one surprising thing about her marriage with Max was that I didn't actually expect it. They did a good job, the author did a good job of making sure that you didn't expect the sleaziness of Max that would come out, because all the whole time when he was like, hey Evelyn, I'm in love with you, I was like, oh great, she can fall back in love again, you know, she's still heartbroken over Celia, awesome. But like, it kind of came out of nowhere for me too while reading the book that he would show her off like that, but it was very palpable. From the minute he wouldn't stop calling her Evelyn Hugo, it was just like little signs, and it felt like I was catching along onto it with Evelyn, which I thought was a genius part of writing. I think it made you feel like you were in the story, and I think that's part of why Evelyn's parts are so engaging, because they did such a good job of making sure that you found out the developments along with her, or at least I felt like I was. And then the end. Well, I will say I got very sad. But it wasn't about like the parts, it was about the deaths. I was sad about John. I was sad about Harry, poor Harry. And I was sad about Connor, and then I was sad about Monique's dad. I don't think it was necessarily a reveal. I was just sad that that had happened to him in the same context as Harry, which is why I don't think the reveal was that big of a deal for me, because, again, as I explained before, I wasn't that invested in it. But I just felt sad at the end of the book, and Monique walking away from Evelyn when she knew Evelyn was going to die was something very raw to end the book with. You could feel it, and I was thinking, I was like, if I was Monique, what would I do? If I knew that this woman was going to end her life because she felt like that was it and she wanted to be with the love of her life, what would I do? And it's just such an interesting thing to think about, because as they set up the story, the end of the story, you know, she's walking away and then she eventually figures it out, and it just leaves you with this confused sense of morality at the end of the book, I feel like. That is what this book made me question, is the morality of all these people's actions. These people's actions. The morality of Evelyn's actions. Everything she does. Is it terrible? Is it good? Is it smart? Is it calculated? I don't know. The morality of everyone's actions, really, like her husband, the morality of all them. Like, obviously, some of them are cut and dry, like Don hitting her is bad. But with Max, it's just so weird to think that he can't even recognize his own objectification of her, or just other things in the marriages. It just makes you wonder. And I think this is why this is such a perfect scenario for this book, because if you're going to write a book like this that makes you question morality, what a perfect setting to set it in is Hollywood. I feel like Hollywood is always challenging people's ideas of what is okay in a good and bad way. Mostly bad, let's be honest, but like the setting, I think, and the environment as Evelyn is a movie star made this just a genius book, and I'm really, really, really a fan of it. I love the way it was written. The characters just felt so alive, and as an author myself, I struggle a lot with making my characters feel like they're there, and Evelyn was so palpable. I felt like I could see her on the street. Like I had seen her in a movie, and I feel like that's really something special in a book. So I guess that's it. If you came back, thank you so much. I really appreciate you watching this video. I appreciate your view. I appreciate you tuning in, and I will be back eventually. I'm not gonna make any promises as to when because I'm a busy girl. I wanna have good grades, do well in school. I'm in a ton of clubs, and so I have a lot of commitments, sports, school clubs, but I will be back eventually, and thank you for listening to my book rant. I know it wasn't necessarily scripted or put together, but I just had a lot of thoughts, and I finished a book, which I feel really proud about because I did have a little bit of a reading slump for a while. So, that's it, and I'll see you guys next time, whenever that may be. Bye!